Welcome to this episode of the weekly News Roundup. We move now to Delhi, where on Monday a massive blast ripped through a Hyundai i20 car near gate number 1 of Delhi's Red Fort metro station around 6:50 p.m., killing 13 people and leaving several others critically injured. The explosion occurred as the car halted at a red light, and agencies suspect it to be a planned terror attack, invoking the UAPA in the FIR. Forensic teams have collected 42 exhibits, including car parts and gas cylinder fragments, to determine the nature of explosives used. The NIA has formally taken over the probe as nationwide alerts remain in force. At least 13 people were killed and 20 injured, marking the most serious security incident in India since the Pahalgam attack in Indian-administered Kashmir in April. Home Minister Amit Shah says he has instructed officials to hunt down those responsible for the deadly blast. Prime Minister Narendra Modi, on a visit to Bhutan, says those behind the attack would be brought to justice. We bring you this report.
According to local media, the Indian government has handed over the investigation into the explosion to the National Investigation Agency, the country's premier anti-terror agency controlled by the federal government. Several countries, including Japan, Israel, and Sri Lanka, have offered their condolences in the wake of the deadly blast. A 15-second clip of the incident shows a congested area near the Red Fort metro station as dozens of vehicles move slowly. A huge ball of fire is then seen at the spot as the i20 car, now believed to be the source of the explosion, rips through the area. The blast occurred hours after 8 people, including 3 doctors, were arrested and 2,900 kilo of explosives seized with the uncovering of a white-collar terror module involving the Jaish-e-Mohammed and Ansar Ghazwat-ul-Hind and spanning Kashmir, Haryana, and Uttar Pradesh. Among those arrested on Monday were Dr. Muzammil and Dr. Shaheen Saeed, both connected to Al Falah University in Faridabad, from where 360 kilos of ammonium nitrate was recovered. The Al Falah University at Dauj, around 45 kilometers from Delhi, is a private institute recognized by the University Grants Commission. Dr. Umar Nabi, who was driving the car that exploded near the Red Fort, was also connected to Al Falah University. Umar is believed to have died in the blast. Muzammil and Umar reportedly wrecked the Red Fort area before the explosion. They were planning to target a crowded place on Diwali, but failed to carry out any activity. Sources added that they were also planning to launch an attack on Republic Day. Sources revealed that Dr. Umar, along with Dr. Muzammil and Dr. Shaheen Saeed, were part of a 9 to 10 member terror logistics module, which included 5 to 6 doctors. The trio allegedly misused their professional credentials to procure raw materials, assemble explosives, and coordinate logistics for JEM. According to the sources, an unspecified amount of ANFO, an explosive compound containing ammonium nitrate and fuel oil, was packed into the Hyundai i20. The bomb was set off by a detonator that may have been manually triggered, which makes it a suicide attack. Sources said high-grade explosives were also used in the blast. One of the explosive samples collected from the Delhi blast site is believed to be more powerful than ammonium nitrate. Sources earlier said 3 people from Gurugram and 1 from Faridabad were taken by police for questioning. Among the accused, Dr. Shaheen Saeed, a former medical college lecturer arrested from Faridabad, has emerged as a key figure in the module. Initial probe findings suggest she was tasked with establishing and leading JEM, Women's Wing, in India, under the banner of Jamaat-ul-Momineen, a newly launched female operations network of the banned outfit. Dr. Shaheen's arrest followed the detention of Dr. Muzammil and Dr. Umar, both associated with Al Falah University, forming the core of the interstate module. Jammu and Kashmir police sources said the trail began in mid-October when Jaish posters surfaced in Srinagar's Naugam area, leading to multiple arrests and the seizure of explosives and an AK-47 rifle. In the aftermath of Shaheen's arrest, a joint team of the Uttar Pradesh ATS, Jammu and Kashmir police, and local authorities raided her Lal Bagh residence in Lucknow. Officials confirmed the house belonged to her family, where her brother Dr. Parvez Ansari, also a doctor, lived. He was detained for questioning, and officials seized phones, hard disks, and several documents from the residence. The National Investigation Agency has taken over the probe, and Delhi government has announced an ex gratia of rupees 10 lakh to kin of deceased, rupees 5 lakh to those permanently disabled, and rupees 2 lakh to those injured. Following a second security review meeting, Union Home Minister Amit Shah said, "Everyone involved in the blast will face the full wrath of our agencies." The Red Fort has been closed temporarily due to security reasons, and the defense forces are on high vigil across the country. The Delhi police is on high alert, and massive checking drives are being carried out across the city. Police personnel, along with paramilitary forces, are deployed in large numbers at all the entry and exit points of Delhi. Vehicles entering and leaving the city are being thoroughly checked as part of the intensified security measures, officials said.
We move now to a topic that is causing a bit of confusion in the Catholic world. Yes, it is a recent doctrinal note, Mater Populi Fidelis, which in English translates as Mother of the Faithful of God, released by the Dicastery for the Doctrine of the Faith, the DDF. The document discusses Marian titles such as co-redemptrix and co-mediatrix, leading many to ask whether these titles may still be used. With the approval of Pope Leo XIV, the Dicastery for the Doctrine of the Faith published a long document on the titles of love and respect Catholics have for Mary and her motherly assistance to believers. But it also explained the problems with referring to Mary as co-redemptrix with Christ. While praising devotion to Mary, the Dicastery for the Doctrine of the Faith firmly rejected moves to formally proclaim Mary as co-redemptrix or co-mediatrix in the lengthy doctrinal note titled Mater Populi Fidelis. The Dicastery said the title co-redemptrix or co-redeemer carries the risk of eclipsing the exclusive role of Jesus Christ in salvation. And regarding the title co-mediatrix or co-mediator, it said that Mary, the first redeemed, could not have been the mediatrix of the grace that she herself received. However, it said the title may be used when it does not cast doubt on the unique mediation of Jesus Christ, true God and true man. We bring you this report.
Cardinal Victor Manuel Fernandez, prefect of the Doctrinal Dicastery, presented the document during a conference at the Jesuit headquarters in Rome and said its teaching becomes part of the Church's ordinary magisterium and must be considered authoritative. The new document said that titles used for Mary should speak of her motherly care for all people and her place as the first and perfect disciple of Jesus, but must not create any doubt that Catholics believe Jesus is the Redeemer of the world and the bestower of grace. The titles co-redemptrix and co-mediatrix have been used in reference to Mary by theologians and even popes in the past millennium, the Doctrinal Dicastery said, but without elaborating on the precise meaning and the extent to which those titles could describe Mary's role in salvation history. St. John Paul II referred to Mary as co-redemptrix on at least 7 occasions, the note said, but after consultation with the then Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith and its prefect, then Cardinal Joseph Ratzinger, in 1996, he did not issue a dogmatic declaration and stopped using the title. Citing scripture and tradition, the future Pope Benedict XVI said, "The precise meaning of these titles, co-redemptrix and co-mediatrix, is not clear, and the doctrine contained in them is not mature." Given the necessity of explaining Mary's subordinate role to Christ in the work of redemption, it would not be appropriate to use the title co-redemptrix to define Mary's cooperation, the doctrinal note said. The title, it said, risks obscuring Christ's unique salvific mediation and can therefore create confusion and an imbalance in the harmony of the truths of the Christian faith. For there is salvation in no one else, for there is no other name under heaven given among men by which we must be saved. The use of the title co-mediatrix is more complicated, the doctrinal note said. because the word mediation often is understood simply as cooperation, assistance, or intercession, and easily could apply to Mary without calling into question the unique mediation of Jesus Christ, true God and true man. Mary's role in salvation history is unique, the document said. She willingly accepted to become the mother of Jesus the Savior. She raised him, traveled with him, and stood at the foot of his cross. While Christ, fully human and fully divine, is the one mediator between God and humanity, it said, he enables various forms of participation in his salvific plan because, in communion with him, we can all become, in some way, cooperators with God and mediators for one another. If this holds true for every believer, whose cooperation with Christ becomes increasingly fruitful to the extent that one allows oneself to be transformed by grace, how much more must it be affirmed of Mary in a unique and supreme way? The doctrinal note said, the Church believes that those in heaven can pray and intercede for people still on earth, and among those chosen and glorified with Christ, first and foremost is his mother. The note said, therefore, we can affirm that Mary has a unique collaboration in the saving work that Christ carries out in his Church. With this intercession, Mary can become for us a motherly sign of the Lord's mercy.
We move now to the Philippines, where Super Typhoon Fangwong made landfall this week, and more than 9 lakh people were evacuated and 4 people have died. The storm hit as a super typhoon with sustained winds of around 185 kilometers per hour and gusts close to 230 kilometers an hour. The eye of the storm hit Aurora province in Luzon, the country's most populous island. The country's meteorological service warned of destructive winds and high risk of life-threatening storm surges from the very intense typhoon. Fangwong, known locally as Uwon, comes days after earlier storm Kalmaegi left nearly 200 people dead. Residents in Catanduanes, an island in the east of the Bicol region, as well as in the other low-lying and coastal areas, had been urged to move to higher ground. We bring you this report.
The storm passed near the eastern Bicol region on Sunday morning before making its way past the Polillo Islands on Sunday afternoon. The Civil Defense Office reported that 1 person drowned and firefighters recovered the body of a woman trapped under debris in Catbalogan City. The Civil Aviation Regulator has closed several airports and almost 300 flights have been canceled. Fangwong was expected to weaken after making landfall, but is likely to remain a typhoon as it travels over Luzon. More than 200 millimeters of rain is forecast for parts of Luzon, with even 200 millimeters in the Metro Manila area. This is expected to cause severe flooding and landslides. In central Aurora, more than 200 people arrived at a shelter in a sports center. Many parents have brought young children too young to remember Typhoon Haiyan, which killed more than 6,000 people when it struck the Philippines in 2013. Fangwong has also forced the suspension of rescue operations following the passage of Kalmaegi, one of the strongest typhoons this year. Heavy rainfall sent torrents of mud down hillsides and into residential areas. Some poorer neighborhoods were obliterated by the fast-moving flash floods. At least 204 people are now known to have died in the Philippines as a result of the earlier storm, while more than 100 are still missing. The Filipino government declared a state of calamity across the country after Typhoon Kalmaegi and in preparation for the coming storm. President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. on Saturday urged the public to cooperate with the authorities. "Every second counts," he said. "I would like to remind everyone to keep calm, listen and follow the advice of their respective local governments, and to evacuate if you live in vulnerable places." The government has given its agencies more power to access emergency funds and fast-track deliveries of essential goods and services. The Armed Forces of the Philippines deployed 243 search, rescue, and retrieval teams to key areas, particularly in northern and central Luzon. Those teams are manned by about 1,500 personnel, with the Northern Luzon Command leading immediate response efforts in coordination with other units and local disaster response agencies. The Philippines, located near the area where Pacific Ocean tropical weather systems form, is one of the most vulnerable countries in the world to cyclones. About 20 tropical cyclones form in that region every year, half of which affect the country directly.
We move now to Brazil, where the 30th edition of the Conference of Parties to the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change, or COP30, the annual two-week climate talks began in Belém, Brazil. It's now been more than 30 years that countries have been getting together to deliberate on a coordinated global response to climate change. COP30, the annual two-week climate talks, is as much about restoring the credibility of this UN-mandated negotiating process as it is about saving global climate. While thousands of climate-positive actions have been initiated as a result, these have so far had minimal impact on arresting the steady rise of global temperatures. Emissions of greenhouse gases, the primary driver of global warming, are still on the rise. And at the current pace of climate action, the world cannot even pretend to get anywhere close to a 2030 target of reducing emissions by 43% on 2019 levels. We bring you this report.
COP30 is the 30th conference of the parties under the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change, UNFCCC, the treaty signed in 1992 in Rio de Janeiro that binds the world to avoid dangerous climate change without specifying how to do so. This year, COP returns to its roots in Brazil for the first time in the Amazonian city of Belém. The Brazilian hosts have a packed agenda with 145 separate items on it and decided to begin early with a preliminary event called the Belém Climate Summit. World leaders were invited to this two-day event, held on Thursday the 6th and Friday the 7th of November in Belém, to try to encourage their negotiating teams to shed entrenched positions and take bold actions at COP itself. Host country Brazil brokered a deal on the agenda for the two-week summit in the Amazon city of Belém, deflecting attempts by developing country negotiating blocs to shoehorn contentious issues like climate finance and carbon taxes into the talks. Brazilian President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva warned against interests trying to obscure the dangers of climate change. They attack the institutions, the science, the universities, he said. It's time to impose another defeat to denialists. The world's biggest historical emitter of greenhouse gases, the United States, opted to skip the summit. U.S. President Donald Trump falsely asserts that climate change is a hoax. It was unclear whether countries would aim to negotiate a final agreement for the end of the event, a hard sell in a year of fractious global politics and U.S. efforts to obstruct a transition away from fossil fuels. Some, including Brazil, have suggested that countries focus on smaller efforts that do not need consensus, such as deforestation, after years of COP summits making lofty promises only to leave many unfulfilled. A new UN analysis of countries' emissions-cutting plans estimated that global greenhouse gases would decrease 12% by 2035 from 2019 levels, improving on an earlier estimate of 10% published last month. The new figure takes into account the most recent pledges, including from China and the EU, but was still short of the 60% emissions drop needed by 2035 to limit global warming at 1.5 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial temperatures, the threshold beyond which scientists say climate change would unleash far more severe impacts. COP30. President André Correa do Lago told a news conference, "I think that the absence of the U.S. has opened some space for the world to see what developing countries are doing." Germany said European countries would push for commitments to rein in fossil fuel use, a goal promoted by Lula. Countries were joined by indigenous leaders who arrived by boat after traveling some 3,000 kilometers from the Andes Mountains. They are demanding more say in how their territories are managed as climate change escalates and industries such as mining, logging, and oil drilling push deeper into forests. Scientists at dozens of universities and international science institutions sounded an alarm over the world's thawing glaciers, ice sheets, and other frozen spaces.
Thanks so much for watching this episode. Until we meet next time, stay blessed.